Welcome to Radio Week. Thank you to everybody joining us today, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for registering. We appreciate it. We do this every year as RedTech, and we're delighted to have you on board. And if you've never been here before, it's a simple concept. We try and locate and find the best experts from around the world to talk about specific topics that we know you're really keen on. So, for example, this week, tomorrow, you hear about studio building, whatever kind of budget you have. The next day, disasters. How do you look after your people and your equipment and your studios? On Thursday, AI. What does it mean for radio broadcasters and audio broadcasters around the world? How is it being used? How is it from an ethical perspective? And then we end on Friday with monetizing your digital audio. But we start today with something a little bit different. We're going to learn from Jason Bryant, who is the founder of Nation Broadcasting in the UK, about his journey taking his radio group from being an FM broadcaster, and it's a journey because he's still on it, and taking them from being an FM broadcaster exclusively to now being a fully fledged digital and FM broadcaster. And that's really exciting. We're also delighted that Xperi decided to pay for this. Thank you, Joe D'Angelo, who made this possible. He's the Senior Vice President of Xperi in the US. And as we have this discussion, you'll discover lots about Jason's story, but you'll also understand the kinds of technologies that are necessary for you to think about as you make this transition. Because in reality, while right at the beginning in the FM era, we were very much a hardware business, today software dominates. And if you don't understand how important software is, you're stuck in the dark ages. So let's not talk anymore about my intro, and let's get into also telling you, very importantly, wherever you are in the world, one of the things that makes this kind of engagement, this panel, worthwhile is if you ask questions. We have some ideas of things you may be interested in, but only you can make it exciting by saying, hey, I want to know this, I want to know that. And that's why Jason and Joe are here. So let's get started. Firstly, Joe, we've already introduced you. Can you give us a sense of how different the world is today from when someone like me was running radio stations in the 90s and the 2000s? Yeah. It's a completely different world. Give us a sense of that.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Omar, thanks for pulling this together. Jason, great to see you. Look forward to the dynamic conversation. And, as 2025 just started, you kind of look back at the last 25 years of technology and the impact it's had on this industry. And it has been significant. It's a little bit shocking when you think about where we started the millennium and where we are now. For example, there are over 5 billion smartphones in use right now, 500 million Alexa devices. And even in North America, we have 120 million cars on the road with HD radio. So the landscape has changed dramatically. And if we go to the first slide, I'm going to just pop up a couple numbers to try to have some fun with everyone. So next slide there, please. You'll see some numbers, some small, some big. But what do they represent? 12, 900, 41 and a half. Let's go to the next slide and unpack them a little bit. So there are basically 12 large global, or in some cases regional, like Sirius XM, digital audio platforms that are competing for your audience every day. Those 12 platforms, and I'm sure there are probably hundreds more when you get into individual smaller technologies, have 900 million registered users. And the scary thing is if you look at just the revenue generated from those audio platforms, so Apple's music platform or Spotify or Amazon's music platform, they account for about $42 billion. Which when you compare that revenue against the global broadcast revenue from both commercial and public service broadcasting, that accounts for about 97% of all the revenue and all the funding available to broadcast radio around the world in the hands of 12 companies. Let's go to the next one. And they're everywhere. Those companies have built technology to be everywhere your audience is. They're in the home, they're obviously in mobile, and more, they're in the car. In fact, I would say in modern cars, every modern car has a digital capability today. And what we're going to talk about today is over the last 25 years, how as a broadcaster that's really leaning forward into this technology and these opportunities, looked at this landscape and what steps have they taken to ensure that they compete on equal footing and they're able to exploit what they do best, which is connect with the local audience. Let's just close out this section. And then if we go to the next slide. Here we are with Jason to tell his story. So Jason, why don't you introduce Nation, and I'll let you and Omar get on with the fun part of the session.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Joe. Well, that time span is exactly reflects our growth. Nation started in 2001. I like to think of us, so we're almost into our 25th year, been going 24 years. And I like to think of Nation as the largest UK radio group not owned by a billionaire. So we are independent. We're sort of number 4 behind, obviously, the big guys. We obviously compete with the BBC as well. And while we compete with Global and Bauer, we also work with them. So Global sell our digital streamed inventory through DAX, and Bauer represent our stations and our inventory for national revenue in Radar through the agencies. And we've grown from a single station in West Wales, Radio Pembrokeshire, which launched in 2001, 2002. And you can see today we've now got a lot of stations which are across the UK and on digital platforms. And really, the journey for us, as you say, started on FM, where we were all very much in that walled garden where you had a license and you pretty much had a local monopoly in there. And we've seen, the growth through DAB, the changes over the past sort of decade or so with DAB, and more recently, in particular, the last 5 years, streaming. And we've embraced it. We see that we can only grow. We see it as opportunity. And actually, ahead of this, I was looking at some of our numbers. In the last 4 years, our total audience has increased by 50%. So while those big numbers, those giants who we're competing with for attention, they're all out there and everyone's competing with each other. But within that, we've been able to grow our audiences. And obviously, if you can grow your audiences, you can increase your revenues as well.
Give us a sense of that, Jason. So as an FM only broadcaster, can you say this was the size of our audience? When we added DAB,
yeah, sure.
This is what happened. And when we became also a streaming company, what happened then? Just give us a sense of that.
So we'd have, back in the day, crikey, Radio Pembrokeshire would have had an audience in the what? And it was a very successful station. It's still going today. It's still a successful station. But it has an audience of tens of thousands, for example. But moving forwards, as we've scaled up, as we've added more businesses, and we're now very much a UK-wide operation. We operate in every UK nation, and we've got sort of major areas of broadcast in London, in the South Coast, in Scotland, in Wales, and we've scaled up to we're hoping to break the 1 million listeners this year, but we're currently at around 850,000 weekly listeners, 6 million hours, and that's grown, as I said, by 50% in the last 4 years. We were at 4 million hours in 2021. So that growth has come through. And actually, I was reviewing our January stream numbers this morning. They were a new record. So right, bang on cue for this presentation today. We've gone through 4 million streamed hours for the first time, monthly hours, which is a great number and represents, a part of our audience. And that number's only going one way. So we've wholly embraced streaming. And as I said, we see it as an opportunity to compete with our larger competitors, Global, Bauer and the BBC, and using things like the Nation Player, which we'll come on to, and which we've built with Xperry. That's a fantastic platform for us to really go out there and grab even more listeners and even more listening hours.
Jason, very obvious question that comes from, and I'm going to come to you, Joe, because I know you're burning to bring something up. But the obvious thing that hit me was when you kept mentioning the BBC, Global, and Bauer. But when you talked about taking on and embracing streaming, you didn't mention Spotify. You didn't mention other on-demand media. Is there a reason that you've excluded them when you think about your business?
Yeah, while they clearly compete for time and audience attention, we very much look, to our peers in radio. We think radio is different. We think it's a built medium. It's curated. It's serving a different need than the streams. And I think the lack of the streamers' ability to sort of break into radio, as it were, and my goodness, they've tried over the years. I think it's a different proposition. I really do. I think we obviously have presenters, we have curated playlists on some of our genre and decade stations, and it is different. So while at one level we do clearly we compete for attention, the battle we've got to win is amongst our direct competitors, and obviously that's all three of the above for hours, and it's with Global and Bauer for revenue.
Joe, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, Jason, you mentioned 850,000 weekly listeners, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Are you counting them across all mediums? So analog, DAB, and streaming?
Well, that will be. That's our published radar number for quarter four. Those are the and they gave us a record, just under 6 million weekly listening hours, which is about 3%. I think it's nearly 3% of the total commercial audience. So we are tiny against the big guys, but we aspire to get bigger. And obviously, streaming hours and the data that gives. I know we're going to come on to some of the stuff that we use the streaming data for, but that really is interesting because it gives you direct data, direct stuff that you can utilize, and it gives us and our clients and our listeners direct accountability for what we're doing.
So radio is not just FM audience. It's accounting for your on-demand audience, your streaming audiences, your DAB audiences, and you're able to aggregate all of that.
Sure. So that is the aggregated published radar number across all of them. But my hunch is that it doesn't catch everyone, because obviously that is that's listeners who are listening for at least 15 minutes a week. And as we all know, some listeners, they dip in, they dip out, they move around stations. So it's never able to capture everything. But clearly that's our trading currency and an important number for us for our national revenue in particular.
So let's pause there because I want to remind the audience that you don't just have to listen. We very much expect you to participate. If you're on LinkedIn, there's a way for you to comment and ask questions. We flash your question onto the screen. Just say who you are if you want to. If you don't want to, that's okay too. Pop that in. We'll put that on screen, and then Joe and Jason will respond, answer those questions. If you're on the StreamYard platform and that's how you're watching, again, there's a comments bar. So if you've got questions, if you disagree with anything anyone's saying, we love disagreement because it makes it more stimulating. Feel free to put that through. We'll pop it on screen and we'll deal with the issues that you're interested to know more about. Or if you have a contrarian viewpoint, we're really interested in what you have to say. So please participate. Really important. So Jason, another question for you. As you made that decision, it was kind of inevitable. You're seeing these opportunities emerge, new platforms. You've got to be on the internet. Everybody's going there. But there's also a cost-benefit analysis. You're saying, well, I got to invest more in order to do this because I'm multiplying the avenues. Perhaps not, right? I don't know how you've done it. But let's say if many stations perhaps just use it as a catch-up medium. They make it all available. It doesn't cost that much. But surely that isn't the best strategy when you're competing against so much content that's available. How are you doing that? What's your content strategy around the new platforms that have emerged?
Well, I think in terms of us getting bigger, which is obviously my goal, we absolutely have to grow. I think you can't stand still in this marketplace. I think you've got to aim for growth. And the only way you can do that is compete with our direct rivals. As I said, it's Global, Bauer, BBC. Increasingly, clearly the BBC, predominantly national broadcast radio services. Global and Bauer have moved towards that. So, the local content card and that local identity, that regional localized identity, is important to us. So one of our significantly growing stations is in the South Coast, for example, at the moment, and we've invested significantly in bespoke content for that market over the past 6 to 9 months. And that's really come through very, very strongly in terms of our streaming data and our streaming hours. And we literally have seen that grow every day over the past 6 months. And that's allowed us to analyze the data, look at where the growth is, look at where we may invest some additional money in program content and new presenters, and to build that out. And and that's giving us real-time data. Real-time information.
Let's go through that sequencing. I think we've got a slide on your first step, which was DAB, and that's slide 7. Maybe we should pop that up. So that was your movement into becoming a DAB in addition to your FM, right?
Yeah.
And what did that do for you, and how did you decide that it was worthwhile making that investment?
Well, so DAB in all of our so in all of those markets there, we've got DAB plus FM. So, for example, if I talk through them in the bottom right-hand corner there, that's Wales, where we started off all in FM, and then we built out a DAB network behind it. So that was simulcast across all of it. In London, in the top left corner there, that's DAB only, so that is a slower path to audience and building an audience. In Scotland, in the top right there, we're FM, where it's lighter red, and dark red is DAB only. And you see, and we have a larger audience for sure in the West Coast, we're on both platforms. And then in the South Coast, in the bottom left slide there, we are on FM and DAB. So I think, what we've definitely learned is that you have to be, the best recipe for success is to be multi-platform. And the markets where we are on FM, on DAB and streamed are without doubt our premium markets, and where we perform better and where we can test with our competitors equally. DAB only is hard, but that pitch is leveling up. And clearly, if you're stream only, I think it's more difficult, although clearly that is a growing share. If you're DAB only, it's very difficult, and that's probably plateaued, I'd say, as a DAB only. So I think a stream first strategy is definitely doable. It's probably not there yet today, but I think FM and streaming work very well together. So our view is that as long as you can reach a lot of people for a relatively cost-effective amount of money, then we're always going to invest in that. And clearly, streaming is probably per listener the most cost-effective way of reaching our listeners. So,
go ahead. Finish that thought.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I just think it's important for anyone watching that they embrace a multi-platform delivery strategy as much as they can. Clearly the big FM transmitters are expensive, large scale DAB transmitters are expensive, but if you're going to build an audience and be as available as you possibly can be to your listeners, then frankly you do have to be on all of them.
But as you think about moving from FM to adding DAB to then adding what the internet makes possible, broadband, does that change your content strategy? Does it change production? Does it change any of the essence of what it was that you were doing when you were an FM business only? What does it change? Can you tell us?
Well, I think what has become more apparent across the business is that we absolutely, we always weigh up the bang for a buck and what we're getting. And I think the larger transmitters, as I said, I think whether they're DAB or FM, I think, they are still great at reaching a lot of people. Interestingly, I'd say, we have started to turn off some of our smaller FM relay transmitters. And we've been one of the first UK groups to actually do that. So we are already starting FM switch off in effect. And, so for example, small FM infield transmitters where we already have DAB coverage and obviously streaming is everywhere. And they're maybe serving, I don't know, sub 50,000 people. then we are starting to look at those, and we're doing a cost benefit analysis of switching those off. We are leading that charge in the UK, and that's probably because we are more efficient at looking at where we spend our money, and that we're investing in content, and we're investing in local marketing to let people know where we're delivering that content.
But does the operating model doesn't change, right? So you don't have to, if you're doing suddenly distributing three different ways, or four or five, you're not multiplying the number of people by that much, surely. Or is it possible to do it with the same number of people that were part of your business when you were just an FM business? What changes there in terms of the operating model? And also then talk about the business model as well, whether there's an adjustment there.
That has, I would say we are spending more on platform costs today than we would have spent 25 years ago when we started. So when we had just an FM stick at Radio Pembrokeshire, we were paying X £1,000 per year, and that was it. We didn't have to worry about it. We then subsequently built out the DAB network, which obviously added to our costs. We're now streaming, that's added to our costs. So yeah, I think the platform costs are now dominant, whereas 25 years ago the staff costs would have been the dominant cost. We've rationalized that, and obviously we have used technology, so we're using more voice tracking or as live voice tracking. We've got more news hubs, and obviously we're aggregating content there. And our presenters are probably, I'd say, best in class at doing as live voice track programming. So it's pretty much instantaneous, almost in real time, but they may be across 2, 3, or even 4 stations. So the presenters, and we've got a great team of presenters and talent, they've had to adapt as well. And as we all know, in this world, it really is adapt or die. And you've got to use your investment, you've got to use your money wisely. And while the margins, they're always under pressure, aren't they? Our margins are always under pressure, and people are always competing for revenue. The fact we've been trading almost a quarter of a century shows that we must be doing something right.
Omar, can I jump in here? Because I want to go back to something Jason said that quite honestly shocked me a little bit. You said streaming is the most cost-effective platform right now. And if I think back to the introduction of the iPhone, back in 2007, you had very expensive bandwidth, very expensive app development, and very expensive, and potentially still, I think, very expensive licensing costs for content. We've gone through a lot of, let's say, evolution and pricing changes for digital distribution of audio. How have you seen those three levers change? Cost of bandwidth, app development cost, and then specifically in the UK, has there been any change in the cost of digital licensing around music primarily?
Sure. So cost of bandwidth obviously has come down pretty much for everyone, and it's much more robust. I think that's really important as well. I think you don't get the buffering issues, the streaming issues that you got even 5 years ago. So I think the robustness of the platform is now second to none. I think the audio quality is fantastic. And in fact, just as an aside there, we use and we've been probably ahead of most of our peers in this respect, is we have used streaming as part of the chain of the broadcast chain. So we're streaming direct to our FM and DAB transmitters, where back in the day you have expensive cable lines and landlines. So we've been ahead of that. So costs have come down there. In terms of app development, sure. I think this leads us neatly into Nation Player. Those build costs have come down, and now you can do so much more in an app than you could do on a single station app. You can have multi-stations, you can do it by genres, you can do it by demographics, you can do it by so many different things. You can, slice and dice it however many ways you do it. And I think, what we've done with Nation Player is to build that into, a single station, single company app, into an app for everyone. without a downside to Nation, with our own stations on there. So, my view is that radio wins together. We've got a lot of independent stations on, as you can see from the slide. And while obviously that was a costly app to build with Xperry, we believe that a For Everyone app, where we share some of the ad revenue, we share the progress that we're able to make on that, and it's for my money, Nation Player is still the best in-car app out there in the UK. Our staff love it, our clients love it, and I know our partner stations are on. A lot of those are now using it as pretty much their solus app. And they don't have to then worry about having a third party and possibly a lesser quality app that's provided doing their own thing, because frankly they don't need it. They can get on with that. And then the third part, what was the third one, Joe? There.
Third one is the cost of digital content.
So the important part, and this is clearly material, and I think the licensing of stream services is really important and is continued to be important. But all of our services are simulcast, so they're all available on at least one other platform. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. I think the ability, particularly in the UK market, to put stations on, whether they're on FM or they're on DAB and they're serving a community, I think you've then got to make those stations more widely available to people who want, they may want their, if they're Scottish and they're down in London for the day, they might want to listen still to Nation Scotland, and obviously they can take their station with them. They can stream it. And I think, that's where the licensing bodies in the UK have got it right, is that if you are simulcasting a service, then frankly the royalties are affordable and they do make sense. And I think that environment works at the moment. Who knows where it's going to be in 5 to 10 years time, as streaming probably becomes the dominant platform for everyone. So I think I think it won't be long before streaming's probably at 50% of all listening.
Jason, you're a broadcaster, and now you're dabbling in all of this. So there's a whole lot of people watching who are saying, hang on a second, I don't think I have the resources, I don't have the balance sheet, I don't have the shareholder support if I'm a private operator to get into this kind of adventure, creating the software, no matter how valid it might be and how compelling you put the case at some of these boards. They'd probably say, make that someone else's problem. Let someone else take that risk. We're not in software. We're in radio. We're content. There must be partnerships. How do you make this decision to go all in on something like this? And then while you're thinking through that, who do you start to say, I'd like to work with me? How do you make those decisions? Because some people can't do what you've just done and, maybe invest in building the software out for things like Nation Player and so on.
Well, we're very good at working on partnerships. We are not a big business, but we're a smart business, and we've been around, as I said, been around a long time now, and actually been around longer than Global and Bauer in their current iterations. But we are a small team, but it's about investing wisely, and I think because we are the largest independent, that gives us a great position in the marketplace, whereby people from other territories who might not be able to work with Global and Bauer, because Global and Bauer, quite rightly, and it's their business, a lot of their stuff is done in-house. A lot of their development they would be doing in-house. We haven't got the luxury of that. But people, who want to work with an operator in the UK, want to come into the UK, we get a lot of incoming inquiries and calls, and it's great to partner with them. So whether they're a large European broadcaster or US broadcaster, and they want to do stuff in the UK, Nation is very much open for business on that. From the other side, looking up, if you're a little guy in the UK, then you can work with us and get your station on the Nation Player. You can have a best-in-class app and do that. And I think if you spoke to any operator in audio, radio, anywhere in the world, pretty much, but particularly in the advanced markets such as the UK, the US, I just think, some of the mistakes that we've made were just not getting on with things quickly enough. And I think, I wish that we'd have built out and built up the Nation Player, for example, maybe 5 years back. And what big because, it was still there. The market was still there. I think we probably waited a little bit too long for that.
So what were the consequences? Because you waited, what were the consequences?
Well, I think our share is going to be, without doubt, our share of the market will be lower than it could have been at this point. We can still catch up. I think you've got to start these things sooner rather than later. I think the only bets you're guaranteed to lose are the ones that you don't take, aren't they? And we've undoubtedly got some of this stuff wrong over the years. But we have positioned ourselves well against pretty significant operators who are our competition. Mm-hmm. And if we can be the challenger operator of choice for people to work with in the UK, fantastic. That is a great position for us to have in the marketplace.
The big advantage, though, that you have, Jason, is you control the purse strings, right? Because you own that business.
I do.
Now, a lot of the people watching may not. So that's where we go back to finding the right partnerships. And that's something I want you to talk about, is how you consider who to work with if you can't get the support of a board to go ahead and make the kind of investments you've had to make for your own software. Joe, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, I just want to add a little color to that question, because it's something we think about quite a lot especially when we look at sustainability. What we do as a partner, and why we're so grateful for the relationship with Nation, is we do what we do well, our partners do what they do well. And we do it in such a way that there's a sustainable business model to protect the platform. And whether that's in car or in mobile, we take that same philosophy into the ecosystem. And we have been extremely successful in deploying our platform in partnership with broadcasters, where their participation does not become a financial burden, does not become a drain on their resources. And that gives them the opportunity to then focus on what they do well and let us focus on what we do well. And, the work with Jason, while we've known Jason and worked with him for years, the decision to partner on Nation Player was made around this time last year. And we were able to launch in a matter of months, and we've scaled the platform. I think it's a great success story of that right kind of collaboration, where we both bring our expertise, we both bring our relationships to market, and then it blossoms.
Mm. Jason, give people who are watching some guidance around how your thought process when choosing partners. It doesn't matter that Xperi is sponsoring this. There must have been reason. You would have done this because it's the right thing to do for your business. How did you get to make the decision? Because there are lots of partners for software. And you've got to then, you might have a criteria, you might have some kind of cheat sheet. I don't know what you have. So give us some idea of how you think about what you need, and then how you go about choosing who's best to partner with and cooperate with.
Well, without it being a cliche, I think it has got to work for both sides. And I think you've got to look at what you want, what your partner wants. And obviously there is inevitably a financial aspect to it as well. So I think, as I said at the outset, we are very focused on growth. We want to grow this business. We want to get to 5% of the UK market. Which doesn't sound a lot, but that would be meaningful. If we can have 5%, we're about 3%.
Okay.
And if we can grow that pie, we'll grow our revenues and get that virtuous circle heading onwards and upwards. So I think what we look for are, frankly, the bits of the business that we can't scale ourselves, we can't do ourselves. If we'd have looked at building Nation Player ourselves, we'd have been looking at an investment in the tens of thousands of pounds. And as Joe said, I've known the guys and the team Xperry and All in Media for a long time, and we worked out a model that worked for all of us, and it fitted their strategic goals for the UK market. It fitted our goals to get an enhanced player up. It meant that we were able to offer third-party businesses a platform to come on board with us, and importantly, it's a platform that can just keep growing. It really can, and I think it's a model that's exportable to other markets as well. I do think it would work well in other markets. And while we're at the moment we're only looking at the UK market, it would be great, for if we were to be involved, if Nation were to be involved in looking at some of the others overseas in time. Mm-hmm. And while that's for another day, we are ambitious. We are always ambitious. So I think tech is always something we're looking to partner on. And then I suppose the other one would be predominantly areas of revenue that maybe aren't on station, aren't traditional areas of revenue, that are whether they're sponsorship, promotion, or traditional advertising. I think if people are looking to trial things in the UK market, and we're always looking to increase our revenues, then we would look at that as well.
So let's segue straight into the revenue part before we get deeper into understanding analytics, for example, behind the DTS platform that you guys have used. Tell us about how many I don't know if there's an answer to this question, but how many partners is optimal that you can manage? So you've got a partner for your distribution, maybe for your in-car. Do you have software partners for the revenue side? Are you doing attribution? Tell me how you're working on the revenue side. Is there something different that you're doing?
No, I wouldn't say it's different. I just, as I said from at the outset, we work with our two largest competitors. We get DAX sell our streamed inventory, and obviously that's owned by Global. Bauer sell our national audiences that are recorded on Radar to the national agencies. And so, we get a share of those revenues. They get their commission in return. So frankly, you've got to be grown up about it. We're very happy to share our info and our data with those guys. They know what we're up to. We don't so much know what they're up to, but as long as the check arrives at the end of the month, that funds us to do other stuff as well. So I think you've got to be.
I'm smiling about that, Jason, because I know how people think about sales houses owned by other broadcasters and saying, I cannot give my sales to them. That would be the most insane thing that I could possibly do. So you just said you've got to be grown up about it. But when you think about the risks of that, I mean, there are enough walled gardens to protect you. Were you happy with that?
Look, I'm very happy with it. Global and Bauer are great operators. Okay. They're fantastic businesses. They've got some great people there. So yeah, so why wouldn't we? They want to win. They want to win in their businesses, and they've got much bigger businesses than we have. And if they can help us a little bit through, and we obviously add to their scale. So it really does work for both sides. And I think, as I said, you have got to be grown up about it. Yeah.
So those who are watching, just want to remind you, if you've got burning questions, if you've got a comment to make, if you want to really push back with what Jason just said. Oh, there we go. Bala from Malaysia. This might not be about the sales thing, though. Have any of your audio streams?
I'm reading that. Yeah, interesting question.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and answer
Bala asking whether any of our audio streams have been hijacked and monetized without authorization. Well, interestingly, I do hear that Nation 80s is big in the Balearic Islands, and so somebody is streaming us and our services in Spain, and that is not through us. So you cannot stop somebody. Our streams are out there. You can't stop somebody rebroadcasting it. I suppose whether they're monetizing it, goodness only knows. But I can only control what I can control, and as long as we're obviously a regulated business in the UK, as long as the streaming and the content that we're putting out on our platforms are within the laws of the land and are regulated and paid for, and we're paying our royalties rightly, that's all I can do. I think it's an interesting question. I don't know how widespread that is, and I suppose if it was a real problem, it would be possible to shut down a pirate stream. But it's not something that's a significant issue for us.
Jason, take us through that collaboration with Joe and his team, and what excited you about the DTS platform. What drew you to it? I think we've got a couple of slides to show as well.
Yeah. Okay. So Xperi previously, the first iteration of Nation Player was was like many stations have, was a one station site, and it was just us. And I think some of the exciting things that I was told about that Xperi were looking at was the data side. So I know we can see who's listening at any one time in car to our services through their dashboard display. And I'm very interested in data and the information that we can get through streaming anywhere. So obviously, that's real-time live data, and that is useful. And the other primary thing, frankly, was the in-car audio, was the ease of use, the fact that Xperi work with the auto manufacturers, and that they've got a strong position in the dashboard. That's obviously really, really important. Radio stays strong on the dial in car, and these guys have got the premium contacts in the market with the auto manufacturers, and if they've got that, that means that our stations and our app and the Nation Player and our partner stations are in the best place on the dashboard. And while that is where, back to Joe's first slide, that is where the competition is. I think those guys are all huge, and they have got they've got their own apps, their own positions on the in-car entertainment systems. Radio may only have one, but so radio's just got the one button or the one spot on the car dashboard. But it's still very important to have that one easy access, so the consumer, the listener knows that's where I go to my radio. And if then you go to a subset, a sub menu of stations, so be it. But that is where we really are competing for space. And
I'm going to come back to you, Jason, to talk about how some of the analytics you received helped influence programming, content strategy. But Joe, just take us through what's happened with the technology since we've
one of the real benefits of the Nation Player platform for all the broadcasters who participate is it's fully integrated with DTS AutoStage, which is our advanced hybrid radio system. And what you're seeing here is a rendering of the actual service running in a very modern dashboard that has 3 displays. You have the center console, traditional place for radio, driver display, the instrument cluster, and then emerging passenger screens. If any of you were at CES, you saw numerous pillar-to-pillar displays that were completely configurable in the car. All the cars are connected. All of these are going to be platforms and interfaces where people can control and engage with radio. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that this platform, DTS AutoStage, has been deployed, launched in about 2021. It's in about 10 million cars right now from the brands you see listed here. But we support radio in over 145 countries through a variety of technologies and platforms. Nation Player being by far one of the most efficient and easy to use integrations that we have around the world. And if we go to the next one, you'll see the impact of this. What this integration allows is for incredibly easy discovery of Nation Player stations and the content that is available on any broadcast that you're able to reach. This system starts with broadcast. So you're going to be first offered the regional over-the-air broadcast services, whether they're analog or DAB. Every service is enhanced with rich visuals, the metadata you've heard I'm sure for the last decade, how important metadata is. We take care of that on behalf of the radio stations with fully licensed album art to make the broadcast radio experience as consistent as all of those pure play digital platforms. So this is, station discovery and engagement on the center stack. If we go to the next slide, you'll see what it looks like when you're actually tuned to a station. So this is just one rendering. And like I said, we have 12 different automakers using the system right now. Every implementation is slightly different, but you can see there's rich, consistent, and engaging visuals for the album art. There's great branding for the radio station. There's even the availability of lyrics and information about the artist. Let's go to the next slide. There you are in the instrument clusters. So the driver has a glanceable reinforcement for their radio station engagement and the content. So they look down, they're able to see what station's on air, what content is playing. This is extremely valuable to the record labels and the music publishers where they're trying to build brand and awareness with their artists and writers. We'll go to the next slide, please. This is the relatively new view. This is for the passenger or rear seat, and this is our on the radio display. And this is showing at any point in time what is playing on the stations that you can listen to. So if you think of historically, your presets are driven by the station, and then you discover what's on air. We've kind of flipped this now where you can actually scroll through and see the songs that are playing and select your station based on the content that's currently broadcasting. It's very engaging. It's not for the driver, it's for the passenger or rear seat at this time. Let's go to the next slide. And this is just a close-up view of the passenger display where they can really engage with the programming. There's actually even a gaming and contesting capability within this passenger display. Next one, please. And I'm going to transition back to Jason because what you've seen is a connected broadcast radio experience, and that connectivity is critical. The connectivity not only enables us to deliver all that rich and engaging metadata, but it allows us to measure and track when, where, how, and what the audience is listening to. We aggregate all that information and we then make it available at no charge to broadcasters so they can better understand their audience, understand how they are engaging on their broadcast platforms, what programming is really resonating with them, and make better radio, optimize their infrastructure, could curate their metadata better. It's a very, very powerful tool. And what's very exciting for us is this is radio's view of big data in the broadcast space. And what I want to put a number behind that. Every week, we are measuring over 3.5 billion engagements with radio. That means the car is tuned to radio. Radio is sending programming information to us that we are then delivering to the car. The car is telling us where it is and what it's listening to. And this number has grown exponentially, obviously, as we've had more cars on the road. But what we're also starting to see is longer engagement with broadcast radio. So the time that these cars are staying with broadcast radio is increasing because of the dynamic nature of the metadata and the service that we are delivering together. So I'll let Jason take you through, his view of our broadcaster portal, and we can wrap up with any questions.
Yeah, very, very good. I want to definitely come to you, Jason, to understand how analytics shaped your thinking around programming strategy, content strategy, other strategy, business strategy. But Joe, before we get there, you've done this with Nation. Is that a model that you would do anywhere? So tomorrow, broadcasting group in Greece said, we've got some really nice apps and we've got 10, 15 radio stations. Can we do this with Xperi, with Joe D'Angelo?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Nation Player platform that we built together is something that, as Jason alluded to, we're absolutely making available in other markets around the world. But if a broadcaster has their own app, for example, we're happy to integrate with that. We have done integrations now with probably close to 1,200 different radio groups around the world. And one of the things we ensure is that whatever technology platform they're using, if they want that platform to feed into AutoStage and be the source of truth for their radio stations, we use that. And many people on the call or on the session are probably already integrated with us. But if they're not, just reach out. This platform is free. There's no charge to be on this. And like I said, we're live in 144 countries. The nation player it really ups the ante and provides additional value, because not only is that platform free for broadcasters, like I said, and it integrates with AutoStage, it is a revenue generating business model. We have built it from the ground up to deliver commercial opportunities for radio stations, not only on their linear programming, but also their on-demand content. The integration with DAX is something that we've done from day one, and there are other programmatic platforms around the world that we are also integrated with. So I'll go back to my earlier point about partnerships and the strength of partnerships. Broadcasters are capital constrained. They have to be very judicious about where they deploy their capital. They should deploy capital where they can add value. Doesn't make sense to try to be both a broadcaster and a technology company at the same time. I really believe that is a misappropriation of funds, and it's unnecessary. Radio stations don't build their own Facebook. They don't build their own X. They don't build it. You have to understand where your strengths are, the value you create for your audience, and look for partnerships where you can build the proper relationship. So
I'm not sure we have a lot of shareholders watching. They'd be delighted to hear you say that. Jason, tell us about how early on the analytics started to help shape the way your business thought about the next day and its strategy. And we've got some graphs to go with it. So just take us through that, please.
Sure. So we absolutely the data that we see from DTS and align with the streaming data that we see just in our daily analytics. Well, we see analytics any time that we can dial up. But we were aware from some of the changes in the marketplace, particularly in the South Coast, is a live example for us, where we saw streaming dramatically increase over the past 6 months. And we have used that data to inform our programming strategy, frankly. And we have invested and we have changed the schedule, invested in new talent that's come to market. And we have watched that grow and grow and grow. And my belief, we get our next radar figures in 48 hours, is that we are going to see our audiences climb, in particular in that marketplace. And previously we'd have been blind to that. We'd have had to wait for the radar data. We'd have been in delay. You're always looking in the rear view mirror, aren't you? I think that live data is a fantastic tool for us as business owners or as program directors or commercial directors who can show clients what's going on. So, the heat maps that and the data that DTS generates and shows where people are listening live to your radio station is really, really useful. And the other thing that it gave us as well is we've used it to look at our audience areas. So we've expanded, for example, some of our TSA areas because of the information. So on the South
tell us what
Coast,
we're looking at now. Is that what we're looking at right now? Is that an example?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Joe, you can maybe talk to the. When I look at that, clearly we're looking at where people are listening to our services in car at a point in time.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we generate these heat maps that represent where the cars are over, in this case, it's usually a week period, but you can select any day of the week and aggregate different days if your weekend behavior is different from weekday. We also allow broadcasters to look at what part of their infrastructure is being used to deliver the signal. So in the case where Nation may have FM and DAB simulcasting. They can look at one or the other or the aggregate of their audience. We're now combining that with the IP data from the app. So you're really going to get a full picture, not only of in-car, but also mobile listening. And, broadcasters around the world use this data very differently. If you're a national broadcaster and you have hundreds of transmitters, you're going to interrogate this data very differently. If you're, let's say, a US broadcaster and you have a main signal and maybe repeaters that go out into a market, a lot of broadcasters are using that out of market data to drive sales in a market where maybe clients never believed they had audience. So they're able to substantiate audience presence in the market adjacent to the advertisers. Mm-hmm. So it's extremely, extremely valuable. And to my knowledge, there's never been anything like this that gives you a near real-time visualization of where your broadcast audience is actually consuming your content.
You just said something that mobile data, you're going to be able to aggregate that, huh?
Well, again, because of the relationship we have with Nation Player,
right,
and this partnership that goes from the IP mobile platform to broadcast, right. Okay. We're able to do things very differently. It's a very unique partnership. It's a very powerful platform. As you may know, we have about 3,000 broadcast radio customers around the world using our app platforms. So we're looking at how to provide a consolidated view and, most importantly, create a consolidated methodology. Because right now, broadcast audiences and IP audiences are measured, targeted, and delivered very differently. So we have to make sure that while we bring these two platforms together to represent an integrated audience, we're doing it in a way that is actionable by the industry that wants to buy and speak to that audience. And that is, there's a lot of partnerships going on around the world with Xperi and other companies to get that right. So it's a blending of methodologies, it's a blending of technologies, but I think it's extremely powerful. And what it will do, in my opinion, as Jason continues his journey from broadcast to IP, it will inform that journey from a customer and a revenue perspective, unlike anything that's been even conceived of. It'll give him complete visibility and the ability to measure the impact of making an audience transition and changing the way a buy is presented to an agency. I think it's almost critical to give you that business view of your audience as you manage the transition.
What are we looking at here as we round up the analytics conversation, Joe?
This is what we call top charts. This is just simply a view of the songs that were listened to most by the audience in car, and it's really just to inform the program director. What you'll see, I think, in most of these reports is the top charts match the rotation and the schedules. However, program directors do see surprises in here. They will see songs moving up and maybe aging out before they think they should. So they're getting, let's call it this is to fine tune your schedule.
Jason, are your program people using this to guide their decision making?
They certainly have a look at that in terms of their A-list stuff. Yeah.
Right. So earlier on, you said, Jason, you said that you are expecting a big jump in the radio. Maybe I'm exaggerating when I say big jump, but you're expecting. Oh, no. Wow. Okay. So can you explain what the analytics did to give you the confidence to make that statement?
They increased 100 times. I mean, we looked at our streaming. It was up 10 times within 2 months, and it was up 100 times just on one stream within 6 months. And that gives me while that we might not get that instantly in radar because it is a slightly retrospective way of measuring. It's coming. And I know that, we are going to get a growth in 48 hours when we see our radars on Wednesday. But I think that's probably built in for the next 6 months here. So we'll probably see the full effect, I don't know, maybe in the summer or certainly by Q4 when we see those numbers. And it's directly informed our decision making in terms of programming. And obviously, the other thing we're able to say to clients is that, if you're buying today, you're getting a great deal because we know the audience rates are going to go upwards.
Mm-hmm. And what's still missing? So we talked a lot about all of the yummy stuff coming through from a data analytics perspective that was never possible before, which is really phenomenal for broadcast radio. But what do you think are the gaps that are still there that you wish were being solved?
I'd love some of this stuff to be used in actual audience data. If you could start to utilize some of the data that's there as part of your listening, your audited listening, I think that is going to, frankly, that's way better than trying to remember what station you listened to last Tuesday afternoon. Which is the way it's done at the moment. And, that can only be better for broadcasters, in particular the smaller broadcasters, actually, because obviously they struggle much more with brand recognition and they haven't got that morning, noon and night marketing and promotion that the big guys can do. So I think, I think if we can get some of the information, some of this data across into the audience measurement business, that's going to be more money for Joe and others who generate the data. But I think it's going to give us a more robust and credible data set and audience, and real-time audience measurement system.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. I think this has been amazing. Just to let everybody know, we had some broadcast professionals who are part of RedTech's database around the world send us some questions in advance because they weren't going to be able to be here for the live discussion. So we're already over time, but that's why we're on this platform, right? We don't have a news bulletin to go to. We don't have program managers screaming at us saying, shut it up, get moving, get out. So we're going to go through these, but let's go quick fire as succinctly as we can, if possible. So one of the questions, in the panel's opinion, the single most impressive application for digital audio, particularly for niche formats?
Nation Player, clearly. Clearly, there's only one answer there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I did say be succinct. Joe, if you want to add something.
Yeah, no, I agree because, I think Nation Player has hit the right balance of niche format and aggregation. It is the go-to place where you're going to find a wide range of content from, a lot of very, extremely qualified and I think, hyper focused programmers.
Right. Okay. Second question. Is there anything that Nation does? And I think this must have come from, one of those stations, independent stations again, around the world that are competing against big giants around them. The question was, is there anything that Nation does for their audiences, especially to improve their lives, that big corporations like Global and Bauer can't do? Not are not doing, but can't do.
I think that has. I mean, that has changed directly recently with regards to the new media bill that's come through in the UK. So, everyone, as I said, they've moved to national content. That means that we're able to focus more on local and regional content. And we're giving. Some of the text that we get, some of the feedback we get on social platforms, and people talking about us on third-party platforms is incredible, where they're saying we have literally filled a hole, we've changed their lives, we're putting good back into something that people have lost. And I think that's all about local content, it's local news, it's local traffic, but actually it's more about local voices and local company. And I think that is, that clearly leans on radio's heritage and traditional strengths, which has always been, it's been a company medium, hasn't it? It's something that you have with you, that you feel attached to and personal about. So I think we are able to do that. I think we're very much closer to our communities than the big guys, and that's just a thing that we're able to do as a more regional and local focused broadcaster.
This one should be pretty simple. DAB surely is not the answer for most countries, particularly those that are emerging economies and so on, because obviously it's an expensive technology, and that there'll be a quick jump directly to the internet. Makes sense?
I think I probably agree with it. I think, I think DAB has been useful to increase choice as a broadcast technology here in the UK and in other developed markets, particularly so DAB plus. And I mean, I've been involved in that game, writing license applications and winning them for 25 years. 1999, I think, was the first one. 1999 to 2000. So it's actually not a new technology, and I think we've got to be honest about that. But it's a robust technology and a robust platform, and obviously in car, it's also worked pretty well. But the rise of streaming is relentless and inevitable. And as I said, I'm pretty sure that in pretty short order, streaming is going to be the dominant platform. And once that goes through 50%, I think DAB will diminish pretty fast.
Okay, last two. These are difficult ones, actually. Do you have a real example? This is from Mark Gilman, one of our subscribers from the UK. Do you have a real example of a cutting-edge content strategy for digital audio?
I think it's just investing in well-known, much-loved voices. I think while that's not that isn't cutting edge. It might fall under bleeding obvious. But it's stuff that people is a little bit out of fashion actually. And I think if we're doing the zigging while others are zagging, I'm happy to do that and provide that choice in the marketplace. But I think radio is a simple medium, isn't it? It's about getting content, whether it's music, speech, or whatever, from one place to a listener as simply and as cost effectively as possible. So I think radio done best is simple.
Omar,
Joe?
Let me jump in there with two examples from here in the US with HD radio. So we have the HD radio has these multicast capabilities where you can add additional programming around a radio station or a traditional analog broadcast. In Nashville, two formats have launched that I think are pretty unique. One is Nashville Songwriter Radio, where you're actually showcasing and helping to bring light to the talent in that community. Songwriting in Nashville is obvious. And now, rather than looking at the artists to bring the songs out, you're showcasing the songwriters that create the lyrics and the music behind the artist. So it's a great thing for that market that is connecting the creative community with the audience and even the industry differently. We also have a station down there called The Hill. The Hill is a local high school. So what they've done is they've programmed this station to kind of meet the demographic of the high school, but they're also giving the high school access to the microphone. So students are using that radio station to learn how to run a radio station, to even sell advertising, to speak to the audience. It's a very unique use of broadcast technology. So I'd encourage you to think about how you can really get even hyper local, either with your local business community, your industry, or your youth groups.
Yeah, those are great examples. Thank you. In fact, I think that segues well to the final question that we received. When you design, develop content for digital platforms, do you still work with the traditional format, like 3-hour shows, 4 breaks an hour, 12 songs an hour? Does the model change? If so, how? And I'm assuming infinitely changeable, right?
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think that does change. I think I think in that world you've got infinite choice, and I think it doesn't matter so much if you've got longer shows. I prefer content to be put into those shows, but obviously you can use voice track technology, and you can put content in different ways and use different. I mean, we haven't even touched on AI voices as well, which is clearly coming down the track at us, and we are starting to trial with. But it's not there yet, and I'm not sure it will be. You know, I think it's how you use AI, maybe in the broadcast chain, maybe as something that is going to be more relevant. But nothing comes close to somebody who's knowledgeable about the music or the area or the passion project, whether it's, you know, or the niche music genre that you're talking about. I think that's always going to outwin other things. So I think yeah, you know, I think things are flexible. I think you can change around the formats. Clearly, the ad breaks can come at different lengths. You can insert additional ad streams from third-party sellers, and I don't think that matters so much, because in the stream world, the streamed environment, where people have chosen you, you know, not from maybe one of 6 stations in a market, but you're one of 1, 2, 3 of 300 or 400 stations. People have chosen you for a very different reason, and they're probably willing to stick with a longer commercial break or do things in a different way. But I think you've got to try. Everyone's trying different things, aren't they? Everyone's trying different models. And the great thing that you will see is that you can look at your own data, your own streaming, your time spent listening over a day or a month or a week, and that will inform your future decision making over the format that you're putting out.
Jason, thanks for bringing up the AI, because it gives me an opportunity to say we do have an AI session, Radio Week. That's on Thursday. So it's the same time. It depends on where you are in the world, but it's from 3 to 4, can go longer, Central European time, Paris time. But 9 a.m., I think, Eastern time, where you are, Joe, is when we start this every day for this week. We're also doing studio disasters on Wednesday. So what if something goes wrong? How do you look after your people? If you have to send them out into areas where there is danger and risk, how do you manage that? What technologies can you use? Tomorrow, we're talking about studios. How do you design studios today in the 21st century when so much more technology and so much more software is available? Can you do it at a lower cost? What kind of budgets do you have? What's necessary? What isn't? What can you leave out? And then finally, on Friday, we're talking about monetizing digital audio. So all of it very relevant, hopefully, for you, wherever you are in the world. Be sure to tune in. I want to thank you, Joe D'Angelo, Senior Vice President of Broadcast Radio from Xperi, for helping us make this particular panel possible. Brilliant to have you here, and of course, your insights. And Jason Bryant, for sharing so freely about Nation Broadcasting, your strategy. Of course, your competitors were watching. I don't know if they picked up anything to have a go at you, but it's been great and very generous of both of you to give us your time for today. And thank you, all of you, for watching, for contributing, for sending the questions through in advance. And of course, some of you will watch this on demand. It is available on the redtech.pro website. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, guys.